Good afternoon, Saints fans, and welcome to Thursday afternoon live stream instead of Wednesday afternoon live stream. I'm Tim, and we're going to talk about the Saints Cleveland upcoming Week 11 game. Kind of an important one. Before we jump into that, um, Early Northern got up real early this morning to get a question in. Um, if that is the number one question, and it could be a little bit of debate on that. But right now, yeah, I guess technically you're still clinging on to, I think what NFL.com said was about a 2% chance of making the playoffs. Um, for that to even be a possibility, you got to run the table. Um, and I think technically they said if we lose to Cleveland, it goes down to 1%. So we're still in there, but come on. But when I saw that, it was like, well, the interesting question is out of that is what does the rest of the schedule look like? I mean, we know the names, but a little more going into it. We're going to talk about Cleveland in detail in just a second. So it's like because like I knew like we go to Green Bay at Lambeau at some point. And I was like, that's going to be significant because we're getting into um, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field type territory at this point in the season. So you get Cleveland at home. Um, Not to spoil the next little bit, probably a game you should win. You think you can win. I think they should win. You get a bye week that's badly needed. Then the Rams come to town. And they historically give us fits. Sean McVay gives us fits. But with the changing going on the defensive side, if you've heard a little bit this week, some of the talk that schematically, especially on the defensive line, they changed some things. They changed some things in uh, coverage on various downs and distances, and so it wasn't the same old, same old. So McVay will have 2 games of film of what Joe Woods and I am totally blanking on our uh, Br- uh, Brian Young, who was moved up to help out in the defensive line. He was mentioned by name by Darren Rizzi yesterday, going, they did some good things getting that pressure back. And we did against Atlanta, who has a pretty good offensive line. And I'm pretty sure they was relatively healthy. I think that was their main five. We did at times get some really good pressure and in 3 big time sacks, 2 of them, you know, Peyton Turner, where have you been? Shows up, gets a strip sack, fumble. They got to kick a field goal instead of potentially on that third down scoring a touchdown. And then, of course, Chase Young with the play on the second down sack when they were looking like they were trying to drive down the field and just ended that drive, which basically ended the game. So some changes there may make some changes that you know hopefully can slow down that Rams offense because I think that's the biggest concern. In week 14, you go to the Giants. You should win that game. I wish it was at home. Then I would tell you we could almost for sure win that game, but it is what it is. It's where it gets interesting. You got the Commanders coming in. Commanders is a better team right now. Uh, Unless some drastic stuff happens, our good luck returns and our fortunes swing way up. And unfortunately, I think they would have to have some of our bad luck that we've been having with the fortune swinging down. That's a good football team. Yeah. Not ready to say it's the best in the NFC or even the best in the NFC East, but it's a good football team. And I think you start kind of matching up position to position, think that they're going to give us some fits. Then the following Monday, Monday Night Football, you go to Green Bay 2 days before Christmas and play the Packers. And for all we know, that can be a blizzard. That's just you. That's definitely one you wish you preferred at home. But you close out with the Raiders and the Bucks, and you got the Raiders at home, and you go to Tampa Bay. So when you kind of look at that schedule, you're going, I could the Commanders is the big and Green Bay, the 2 big ones that I'm going. It's hard for me right now to say yeah, run the table is a possibility just because of those two. And the Rams are the Rams. And I will say this, that I feel like the Rams game, you beat Cleveland. So you lose to Cleveland. Well, obviously the run the table thing ends right there, but you lose to Cleveland, you get a week off, you come in and you beat the Rams, who, like I said, the last few years has just had our number in every way, shape, or form. Um, and you start grabbing onto a little hope. And it's like, maybe we can do this. Maybe the Rizzy bump will keep carrying on. So it's an interesting question because part of me wants to say, hell no, it's not doable. And honestly, I think all the percentages and everything says that. So, I said, well, let me go take a look at it. And I'm kind of saying, not very likely. Not very likely at all. But fortunes can change in the NFL. You saw quickly how ours has changed a couple of times already this season. So I guess at 1%, or 2% that NFL.com saying, eh, Jim Carrey. So you're saying they still have a chance? Yeah, I guess technically they do. Um, and one other thing, because it just started about 5 minutes ago. I do have the merch shop online open. And in the comments and in the description of this video, have a discount code for the next 24 hours and honor this live stream. You get 10% off anything you may like. I had a couple comments about my Hoodoo Voodoo Hoodat shirt that I wore a couple of times. That's where it comes from, plus some other stuff. So if you like anything, you think you can help the channel out, awesome. Thank you. And like I said, for the next 24 hours, you get a 10% discount. So, yeah, I see you it's popping some stuff up northern. Let me roll into this and then we'll come back to that because the first thing I wanted to look at, um, 10 games in, so everything's kind of a 1/10 sample size. Um, normally this is a starting point for me. It's like the how do you kind of match up version of the whole season as a whole. It doesn't encapsulate everything because obviously our injury problems and some of our bad luck we were just talking about kicks in. And I don't know enough to know about Cleveland if they've been dealing with the same stuff or not. I do know enough to know that biggest problem they had going was Deshaun Watson. Arguably was the worst quarterback in football this year. Possibly even last year and this year combined. So, but you don't want to see anything that's just so lopsided that it's a concern. And when the other thing, let me point out the highlighted column is where we were last week in the overall ranking. So defensively, we didn't really change a whole lot. And if you look at what Atlanta was able to do, we had some periods in that game where we shut them down. They couldn't get anything going, especially late in the game. Thank God, because they got close, but they couldn't mount the drive to go down and try to win it. Some good fortune. Look, we talked about it already. A guy that never misses field goals managed to miss two and get one blocked in the same game, and that has probably never happened to him before, and will probably never happen to him again in his lifetime. But it was, we were owed some good karma or good luck, or whatever you ever want to call it, in that game, and we got a coup being 1 for 4, I believe, kind of helped out. So overall, our defensive stance numbers as far as overall in the NFL didn't move a whole lot, but I think again, this is where numbers can play tricks on you a little bit. You saw at times they did play really good football. At times they still missed tackles, gave up big plays, had penalties, but they played good enough in other spots. They were able to overcome that, hang in there, get a little good fortune to finally come their way and walk out of there with a win. For the foreseeable future, that's probably what the formula is going to look like. But you're playing a team this week that is not as good as Atlanta. Um, and I saw what you were leading off with down there, Northern. So this is the point I was planning on talking about it. As you get in the Browns offense, a lot of that is largely due to Watson, who's IR done for the year, but eh, I mean, was mostly terrible all season long. You getting Winston. We played against him for years in the division. He was here for a season, 2 seasons, whatever it was, three. I don't even remember, but for a period of time. But you know what you're going to get with Winston, and what you're going to get. I believe it was his 2018 season, 20, whatever season he had, where he threw for 5,000 freaking yards, 32 touchdowns, and 30 interceptions. I'm like, that's his whole career encapsulated over at the time, 16 games. Because, yeah, he can do some unbelievable stuff and throw up some unbelievable numbers and then turn around literally seconds later and throw a pick six. And you just, the Forrest Gump line about life's a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Well, Jameis, that's kind of the way he plays the position. And even I remember he did have a few games when we were trying to use him as a sorter, where a couple of games where I was like, oh man, there's a couple of games like where it was bad Jameis, and then there was a couple of games where it was just somewhere in the middle, and you just like, so you get good Jameis. This is the tricky part with their offense is you get good Jameis. It looks like they've got a healthy Nick Chubb back, which is automatically going to give them a fairly healthy running game. And don't forget about Jerome Ford, who I think they wanted to lean on him more earlier in the year. Didn't quite work out the way they were expecting, but he's still capable of running the ball and making some big plays if you don't handle him and tackle him when you get a chance to tackle him, get him on the ground, that sort of thing. That's two guys you can't miss tackles. And the problem with Chubb is he can make you miss tackles. He's that good. Again, we don't know how healthy, but if he's 100%, if you get 100% Nick Chubb, you got a handful to deal with for 4 quarters. David Njoku has kind of almost an up and down career, and I think a lot depends on who's been trying to throw the ball to him, because he's another one at times just look really good tight end that can hurt you, and at other times it's like he kind of disappears. I'm looking at this from a distance. I don't know if that's on him, on the quarterback play, on offensive coordinator, combination of both. And defenses have gotten better. And you can look around the league and see this. There's a lot of defenses have gotten better at taking tight ends out the game. But you better account for him and not let him do what we sometimes do. I don't want to see. I promise you, he can throw up Dallas Goedert type numbers if we don't cover him like we didn't cover Dallas Goedert. Simple as that. The real question mark is those three receivers, because they traded Amari Cooper to open up a spot for Cedric Tillman, who's a second-year guy who they apparently loved. A couple starts, he's turned some heads and he can make some plays. And then you still have Jerry Jeudy, who they picked up from Denver, who you're still kind of waiting to if he's ever going to kind of catch up to his first round billing. But you leave him open, he's going to hurt you. There's no doubt about it. And then also Elijah Moore, who kind of is a name nobody ever hardly talks about. But again, if you leave him open and Winston can find him, he can hurt you. So I mean, that's it's definitely not like trying to cover our receivers in that span where we didn't have a big play guy. We didn't have our number one, and the deep threat that MVS hadn't. Well, I think he was on the team. We just hadn't bothered to get him on the field till last Sunday. So it's a situation they can exploit, but I think they can only exploit it on the offensive side if we let them, because the last thing we're going to talk about is their offensive line. Typically, when I see offensive line rankings, they're somewhere around where ours is. And I know they have a couple of injury issues during the course of the year, sort of like we did. And then some guys that they were hoping, oh God, I hope he plays above his head because we're going to need him to step up, sort of like we did. So it's almost a mirror of the offensive line. And at times this year, offensive lines played well. At times they were horrible. And during the course of a game, it's kind of getting to be the motif of this game. For this game is They are a lot like our offensive line, where at times you can have 2 or 3 drives where they're awesome, and then you may go a quarter and a half where they just can't get anything blocked up, and it's a struggle to pick up 5 yards, and you're pretty much 3 and out, or maybe you get a first down, then you're 3 and out after that. We've all seen it. I think they're kinda off the numbers and knowing what I know, I think they're kinda in that same boat. So, and you look at our offense against their defense, you're kinda looking at the same. Our offense hasn't played better, hadn't really moved their overall numbers a whole lot, but we're kinda middle of the pack. Their defense is kinda middle of the pack. Um, I feel like if you do your job, no stupid plays, no stupid turnovers. We, for the most part, avoided that last week against Atlanta and definitely avoided the turnover issue. Um, and especially if we get McCoy back, it gets a little easier for us because, you know, Long said he's one of the best, if not the best center in the league. Well, Darren Ridgey made the comment yesterday, and I never really thought of it till he said it. And he goes, "Yeah, that's important, but he is so good that he's really should be in the conversation of one of the best offensive linemen in the league." And I went, You probably could make an argument for that. So when you lose somebody that important, it's bad enough if you're just starting center and how important that is. But he's like that's a high caliber player you're losing. Where across the league, people are going, "Yeah, he's one of the best," and I think a lot would say that. You get him back, it can straighten out a lot for you. Is I think we can outblock that defense. I think we can get our playmakers in space. They traded the Zadarius Smith, so their bookend ends of Smith and Myles Garrett is now just Myles Garrett, and you will have to block Mr. Garrett because if you don't, you're going to get Derek Carr or whoever else may be back there killed. They just lost a pretty good young middle linebacker they were developing. Jeremiah, I am going to butcher this, so my apologies, but I'll give it a shot. His last name is Owusu Cormea, I think. Um, it's a good young developing linebacker. I think he's been in the league a couple of years. Went on IR last week or so, the week before. Kind of having to fill in there. They're going with some older veterans like Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush, who they don't suck. They're not terrible, but kind of a step down from the young guy they had handle in the middle. You got to be careful with their secondary. You're still talking, look at guys like Denzel Ward, Grant Alpert, Juan Thornhill, some really good guys back there that can get to the ball and make some plays. But at the same time, I think you can do some stuff on offense that can get the best of them. So I feel like we should win this game. I especially at home, especially with the Rizzy bump, especially if we get that crowd back in to where we know the crowd can be. And just don't give them the chance to make plays to beat you. I think they're just offensive and defensively, they're on a good day, kind of middle of the road. But if you and they've got a couple wins on the year where they snuck in and you give them a chance, they and keep that door open for them. They've managed to walk through it a couple of times. But I like our roster better. Um, both sides of the ball, I like the attitude we've kind of developed that we haven't seen most of the years. Just as aggressive fighting spirit, and I think it'll do us good. So, um, I'm going to be so pissed if we lose this game. It's not even funny, but I mean, there it is. I don't think we should. I think this should be a win. And to Northern's question earlier, if you're going to run the table, well, obviously you got to win the first one. And with the bye week coming out after and the Rams coming at home after that, if you want any legitimate chance to run that table, because I think if you run the table, you probably have a wild card. If you don't, even if you manage to win most of those games and get 8 and 9, I don't think that's going to do it for you. And more than likely, even if you would tie somebody at that point for the last wild card spot, you're probably in a bind on tiebreakers. So Any hopes for the wild card? I mean, they're all big games, and you got to win them all at this point. But at least you're starting off with one that I don't see how that's we're not heavy favorites, and it's not considered to be a win for us. So, uh, so yeah, I just gave you the long version to the short answer. Me give you now. No, he shouldn't, and I don't think he will. Um, but if you get the 32 touchdown, 5,000-yard version of him without the 30 interceptions, it's gonna be a long day. But I still think we can beat him. I think they had it a win is 3, if I remember right. Um, everything's below 5 right now for us. Um, actually, behind us is the Giants and the Panthers. They have them like 14, 15, and 16. And I think it's technically a three-way tie for last. I think all of them had the 2% down to 1 if you lose, up to 3 if you win type thing. So if I can create it, I'd love to. Um, so yeah, I'll try. Um, but no royalties on that one. All right. Why? Just. I mean, I was having this conversation with two friends of mine the other day, and we were trying to remember that at some point, uh, he had a game with the lowest recorded. Was it? This what we couldn't remember if it was QBR or something ever by a starting quarterback. And I mean, look, there's been some really bad starting quarterbacks, and what makes that an even worse that is he used to be a really good one, knocking on the door of elite status when stuff happened. So it's just amazing. But did not have not sat down and watched a whole Cleveland this game this year, but suffered through some red zones and some clips here and there when he was, and it was like, man, just like a what 5 or 6 year older version of Anthony Richardson because they both look just like. Huh. So I don't think Winston can make that position anywhere as unbelievable as the statement's going to be. I don't think he can do anything to make it any worse than they already were under Watson. It's such a low bar. Almost no chance but to go up. Well, he got hurt because somebody missed a block and um, on a horse collar, and then ended up getting horse collared, and that's what ripped his knee up. Um, but Winston as a runner was because there was no design runs there. There were some scrambles that he to me always spent an awful long time in the same place while he was trying to scramble. No, I've gotten cocky before with putting games in the win column. No, 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 no. If you remember 2 weeks ago, I was cocky and put Carolina in the win column, even though I had severe reservations about what was actually going to happen. So I'm following my inner doubts on the Cleveland game here because. And here's the other thing. I think the Rizzy bump is a real. I think anytime when a club is in the midst of a 7-game losing streak, and you make a coaching change, especially with a coach the players like and respect, and he has the ability to feed into that and kind of get them all back together and go, all right, all right, guys, charge, let's go get it. And you definitely, I shouldn't say definitely, you're more than likely going to get that for one game. Can you get it for more than one game? I think that's important too. I feel like we will. Um, But you don't know that for sure. I mean, you don't know how that keeps carrying through. The other thing is a lot of talk last week and then again yesterday, and I think their press conference today is probably going on right now. So I really won't see the injury report um, or anything till after this or anything they have to say. But it's just kind of sounding like the way they reworked their whole practice structure, from stem to stern, just from the time they get to the building till the time they leave it to go home. Um, comments like, "Man, that's the hardest we've worked in an in-season practice since I've been here," and stuff like that. And it all benefited, I think, to the win. Let's see how this carries, because you had that Rizzy bump, that shot of adrenaline. Let's see how far this carries, which is why I probably should have mentioned that when I was talking about. I think the bye week's coming at a very important time. So you ratchet up the intensity. You managed to get out the dome against Atlanta with a win. You ratchet up the intensity, so you can beat Cleveland, a team. This is as close as I'm gonna get Northern to guarantee a win. A team you really should beat, and I expect you to beat. Get a week off, kind of let everything settle, rest some guys. Hopefully, some guys are going to get healthier and recharge a little bit. So now, if you've had that fight and that passion and that intensity working for you for 2 weeks, the part is through a bye week is keeping it going, but you you let them recharge and rest up a little bit, come out and get it back. Then that Rizzy bump might be able to carry you through the rest of the season and give you a shot. All I want is I want going through that schedule and looking at it. You have 3 games. I would say definitely the Rams, the Commanders, and Lambeau Field guys, Green Bay. It'd be tough to beat all 3 of them. But you show up and give because I would have had Atlanta, and I think I mentioned this before the week. It would have added that 4th team to that. And you got there, the fight, the passion. You fixed enough of the stuff that you can control to give yourself a chance to win the game, and then you made the plays sporadically. Wasn't consistent, but you got enough of the plays on both sides of the ball you needed to beat him with a little fortuitous field goal kicking problems for the other team thrown in. But hey, the way we'd been playing the weeks before, Koo could have, you know, Koo could have missed 6 if we'd have been playing Atlanta any of those weeks. They still going to beat us by a couple of scores easy. So you put yourself in the position to get in the conversation. And the thing is, let's talk about the other thing. There's the Rizzy bump, and then there's momentum. So you win 2 in a row, you get through your bye week, you come out of it with that fight and that passion and you would likely keep the momentum through the bye week if you can do that. Look, just like we got on a horrendous roll where we lost 7 in a row, I do believe there's enough talent on this team. The way the schedule lays out, if you hit it right and you pick up some momentum and start rolling and give yourself something we haven't had since week 1 and 2, a win streak by winning this game this weekend. Again, who knows? You're kind of turning some misfortune around if you're able to do that. And I think that's the biggest thing when you let off with the number one question in everyone's mind. I think that would be my number one question. Um, can we keep this going? Here's why. And I'm slightly hesitant to bring this up after only one game. However, if you did have enough talent and enough coaching ability in that building already, who's being held back by the guy that you just got rid of, and already, like on the defensive side of the ball, one game they made some changes that worked out. Offensively, we saw some of that creativity coming back in for a guy who that's what we thought we brought him in to run the offense. It makes no sense to me, and I'm not implying anything because I'm not in the building. I don't know, but it just seems like if you keep seeing that, and then you keep realizing maybe there is enough to build with here in the future. We don't have to completely wreck everything, and it's more of spending 2025 getting under the cap and developing some of these young guys who are showing up and like showing they want to play. Or look, I'm gonna throw a name out at you is Ugo Amadi, who played out of his mind in that game as a slot corner. And he's a guy. He's second year here, and he's not technically a young guy. He's been around the league a little bit, but I mean, he just went out there and go. That was you get 7 more games like that out of him. Just going, I want to be here. I want to be here. You can reset the salary cap, keep some talent, keep some veterans like him around. You may not even be selling out 2025. You may stay as competitive as you can be, but instead of losing competitive edge and everything in the decline we've been on, you flip it that way. Maybe you can get it going back this way. So I think that's the most, because if Rizzi can do it, I do not like, I'm going to say this up front. I've never been a big fan of interim head coaches being made head coaches. However, there's been some success. College and NFL rank I don't know about, but you probably go back and find some. So it may not be the worst idea, especially since Rizzi is a guy that he looks and has been mentioned as a guy that will be an NFL head coach someday. So he's auditioning right now, whether he stays with the Saints or somebody else is going to be looking for him. So I do believe there's going to be a lot of head coaching jobs opening up this year. I want to see if, that's the best proof in the pudding is what do you really have there? Can you realistically consider giving him the interview to bringing him back? Because that's a scary thought that once again, we're going to get back. Well, we just want to roll it back and get back in our old habits. But I don't think he would allow that. I really don't. And I think you can get a better read of that over the next 7 games or so and go, is it legit? And look, I wouldn't bequeath him the job anyway. I'd clearly state that. Now, I open up the search and bring in everybody you can bring in and literally hire the best person possible for the job and then empower them to do the job and get stuff done. What's up, Jasher? Yeah. And Campbell, yeah, he was an interim. I think they took him right off our staff. But I can't swear to it. Did they take him off our staff to hire him, or was he taken off our staff and hired and then promoted as interim? I can't remember. But to your point, yeah. And I'm starting to wonder too, if there isn't something to be said. I don't quite know how to describe this because you're so used to seeing a head coach predominantly being a coordinator, overall overseer of one side of the ball. Campbell's tight ends coach. He might have had an offensive line coaching job at some point in his career, but the point being is he was never truly a coordinator, as far as I know. And I always thought you had to be a coordinator to prove your mettle to be able to take the next job. And he's kind of showing me, nah, not really. There's no doubt he has a plan. And I know he came off kind of crazy in his first couple press conferences, and I think he may be a little crazy, sort of like Darren Rizzi has come off a little crazy, and I think he may be a little crazy, but I think a little crazy may be good because what I think these coaches are doing is they know football. Both of them have a good understanding, I'm pretty sure, of what's going on both sides of the ball. Could they actually sit there and call plays and run either the offensive defense? Who knows? But they have enough wherewithal to tell their guys on the respective side of the ball, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that. Running down literally sprinting down the sideline to tell Kubiak to make sure we're going for it on this 4th and 2, 3, whatever it was in the red zone on that first drive. I think they're both not afraid to make decisions and not particularly worried how they're going to look if it goes bad. I'm almost 1,000% on that on both of them. They could give two craps. They're going to own their mistakes, learn from them, and move on. So there may be a lot to say to get out of that mind think of, oh, you need an offensive coordinator or you need a defensive coordinator, and they've got to run their side of the ball, and then they've got to be head coach. Where Campbell and Rizzi in this case, Harbaugh, it was, somebody had brought up, I think it was Northern, when we were talking about that a couple of shows ago, special teams coach, and you can't really knock that guy a whole lot. But what it allows them to do is to be the decision makers on both sides of the ball. Now they have to understand what both their offensive coordinator, their defense coordinator, and their coaches are doing, but they're all smart football guys, so they get it. And I'm going to make the big decisions. I'm going to tell you what I need you to do, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it. Because as coordinators, that's your job. And when you don't do it, then I'll become involved in it. And if you keep not doing it on a regular basis, well, then I know I got to go get a new coordinator. So I promise you, a couple of years ago, I would not have been open-minded of handing the interim coach a head job if he is the best guy. To just totally wrote it off. And offensive or defensive coordinator, I always felt like, no, he's got to be one. He's got to be one of them. I think, again, the NFL evolves fast, and I think even the head coaching styles and what works and what doesn't work is evolving, and you just can't get stuck in the way things were always done. And this may be the new way to do things. Yeah, and he still is a rah-rah guy, but I that's a good point about him being alpha, because I think you got to be careful when you're like a rah-rah guy for two reasons. One, um, players aren't stupid. So if it's not genuine, not only are they not going to buy into it, but there's a pretty good chance they're going to go completely opposite direction and turn it off and really not pay any attention to you. And that's bad. But an alpha is something different. He's going to be rah rah, but he's in a and look, Rizzy seems kind of that way too. Like he's got their backs and he's cheering for them. But Peyton Turner celebrating with 30 seconds left to go in the game, and Rizzy taking the time out to chew his ass out about it. I mean, and he admitted it, going, "No, win the game, then go celebrate. Don't start 30 seconds early." See what happened to the defensive back with Chicago a couple weeks ago against the Commanders. So I agree with that. Campbell's definitely alpha. I would not mess with that dude. And just I remember Rizzy, and I did a video on it way back in the OTAs or training camp. But when he was speaking to the media about the new kickoff rule and talking about the Saints special teams, um, and it was a long video that I had to chop down. Otherwise, he went on twice as long as any assistant coach ever goes. But you could tell, again, a little crazy, very passionate. And I remember they asked him something about JT Gray and his answer on what JT Gray means to special teams and all. I was convinced that when it came down to final cut downs, if somebody would have suggested, hey, well, look, we need a roster spot for, an extra offensive lineman or wide receiver or whatever, how about we cut JT Gray? I really felt like Rizzy would have came over the table ready to fight if somebody had even suggested that. And I say all that to say, because that's alpha. So that's the guy running the show right now. Now he's going to probably do that for anybody. That no, my guy. And he's going to play hard for me. He's going to fight, and he's going to do the stuff I need him to do. So I like the point. And also with alpha, and like the case of Chew and Peyton Turner out with 30 seconds left to go in the game. Let's win it first before you celebrate. Sometimes you just got to get in their face about it. And Campbell definitely ain't. I'm pretty sure what we've seen so far, neither is Rizzy. They'll get in whatever face they need to get into. So I cannot do every day. Not now. Um, it's not possible on many, many different levels. But hopefully, yes, someday I would like to be able to do that if circumstances work themselves out. It's what we're working towards. But it'll be a little ways off. But I appreciate the thought. Yeah, if I could, I would, but just right now I can't. Yeah. Um and it was like he walked in demanding it. And I think that's why he took some heat for those first kind of press conferences from the media because and I could be wrong, but I just get kind of the impression he walked in there with an attitude. I'm not taking any crap from anybody about how bad this team has been because we're going to restore what Detroit used to be. So far, he seems down on a path to do it, and he recognizes. See, one thing I like about him, um, I mean, hell, he drug Aaron Glenn up there with him from New Orleans and saw that's like, man, this is the defensive coordinator, guy that I want to run my defense. I think Glenn took a little heat last year as a DC, and so did Campbell, but you couldn't budge Campbell on it. I think it's kind of working out for him this year. Talking about the best team in the NFC, I think they've got the best record and would be the one seed if the season ended today type thing. But I'm just looking up and down that roster going, holy crap, man, they got some guys that can play on both sides of the ball, and they got some good coaching in the coordinator spots. And you got the alpha guy like Campbell, who's not taking no disrespect from anybody. And I think he put his foot down the first press conference, letting the media know that no, not anymore. No, this isn't the old Detroit Tigers of the last 20 years. That'll come at a later time. Look, I tell you this much about him. It's your fault you brought his name up. He still has ample time to show that he gets it. And some of that is going to be, and this is going to be next week. Is it as the plan right now was actually the plan for this week, but that just didn't work out right. Um, is to start talking a little bit about the future because some decisions now, some of them we won't know, and that's kind of the key thing in this. We won't know during the rest of the 2024 season if those decisions are being made, but they need to be. So, give you one right now about the whole cap issue, not to go into any type of deep dive there. The insane, they're not insane. There's a purpose, but they're complicated. Some of them rules about when you can restructure or not restructure contracts, but one of the big rules that we found Sports Counting on Monday night. We're kind of going through this, trying to figure some of this mess out. Um, but we found one that apparently said, if we are reading it right, it was worded in lawyer, so it wasn't the easiest rule to read. But as far as we can tell, what it was basically saying is, for your restructure or extension or whatever you're going to do for the 2024 season to count in the 2024 season and not in the 2025 is you have to do it before week 18. It's like apparently once the last game in week 18 is over, that's it. Everything you do is now basically in 2025. And the reason why you want to do that now is especially since you're getting some injured guys back, and this is why I'm bringing it up because it just happened this week. As soon as they realize McCoy's on the verge of coming back, Lemieux is back, and I know Patrick is hurt, but doesn't seem like he's hurt enough that they're going to put him on IR. So you kind of got your interior guys slowly coming back. You cut McGovern, the center, and you immediately cleared cap space because there was no guaranteed money. All it was game checks. So you cut him, what, 8 game checks left to go, whatever the money. It cleared like almost $1 million in the current cap. So ideal world, and especially this is the kicker. Now we were on the positive note, hey, can we run the table? But the reality is we probably won't. And when you won't, you may be looking down that roster too and going, I could maybe shave off a few another million or two here by kind of doing similar moves. These veterans that have a big high, much higher game check, that they're only going to see that money if they actually play the game, and if you cut them, then that's it. There's no cap hit to you whatsoever. And then letting some of those practice squad UDFA guys down there coming in and finish out the season, because you're saving money when the guy that's making 100,000 a game gets cut and there's no salary cap implication, and you pull up the guy 50. Well, you do that 5 times. You've created a little more cap space. And then if you need to extend or move money for next year to a young guy that you want to give him more this year, instead of doing what they've been doing that created the whole situation with the insane signing bonus, hand him the check, then prorate it out over the life of the contract and pay, $20 million out over pay $20 million in the current year, but have 5 years worth of $4 million cap hits to account for it. You could on some of these just go, you're getting a $2 million signing bonus, but you're getting it now. And we're not prorating it. But what we are going to do is on the back end, instead of having dead money there, we're going to have stuff like $10 million bonus, 5 of it guaranteed. So you might have to wait, maybe a $5 million guaranteed roster bonus if you walk in the door at training camp. Well, it's after June 1st. So it's not going to hit you right away in 2025. Doesn't guarantee till he walks in the door. He gets his $5 million. So his $1 million salary last year, you gave him $2 million this year as this training camp or as the signing bonus without prorating it. So it's off the books this year. Then he walks in, makes training camp the first day. You hand him $5 million. That's salary cap gymnastics. That's the kind of stuff they're going to need to start doing. And so I'm on the lookout for seeing some of that stuff. It probably won't happen now, but after the bye week, when the things kind of get settled, you may start seeing some of those subtle moves. And I think they have to happen. I don't know. None of that makes sense. It doesn't. Um, and Northern's going to think I'm hating on them again, but just nothing there makes sense. Things were. I think the biggest issue, and this is the one I have, and I promise would probably change my tune if he would, instead of coming out like he did the other night and saying, "Oh, how about that MVS?" Saints fans didn't know who he was, but I bet they know who he is now. You, Mickey, I knew. People watch his channel knew. We talked about it. Saints fans are informed, smart fan base. Yes, there may be a percentage somewhere who may not have known who he was at all, or they watched the Super Bowl when he caught the touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes. May have taken a minute to go, oh, yeah, that's the guy that used to be in Kansas City. Oh, that's the guy that was in Green Bay before that. Oh, that's the guy that can make huge plays like the two he made against Atlanta. Come on, man. So I think it's just that's where the attitude, I can't understand where it's coming from, because I think if he would, the biggest mistake was he had 2 Super Bowl windows that he built. He won one in 2009. That window stuck around to roughly 2011. The cracks were starting to show a little bit, but still, you had the bounty game thing 2012. You kind of picked it back up 2013. That was the end of the run. Then you had to go 3 years of which you went through. Then you kind of reset it in 2017, and you had another run for your second window. It wasn't the same one. 2019 is kind of my opinion, but maybe you could argue 2020. That window closed. 2021, he got nailed shut and boarded over. In 2022, he got encased in cement and dropped in the middle of the Marianas Trench. Problem is, 23 and 24, we were still acting like we could open up that window and make a Super Bowl. And he still acted like it. And if he would just come out and say, yeah, we kind of overshot that one a little bit, and we were way over our skis, but it's, again, Saints fans are smart. We know it, Mickey. But the second thing is, I think, is there's a lot of resentment built up there on both sides. I know I have resentment for being treated like that. We're not idiots. Um, just a little like we're gonna go back. We realize now what we did, what all the stuff we went wrong. The biggest mistake we made was knowing Drew was retiring and we were taking that massive dead money hit the same year revenues dropped because of the pandemic in 2020. And that's where the huge cap problems came from. And that's what basically closed the window forever. That window that you had to start over and go to the next one and get that sucker open and work your way through it. So I think if you'd admitted to that, we're smart. And if you treat us fairly, I do believe we would treat you fairly, going, it's going to suck, but we got to give Mickey in the front office and all 2-3 years to kind of rebuild 14, 15, and 16 and 17. Boom. And you were off and running for that 3 or 4 year span where it was legit. You were a Super Bowl contender. He could get us back to that point and start. And I think he has to start this year and move us into that position where we survived 2024 trying to get the best out of it, building to 2025 with that being a building year. And hey, you could have something by 2016 where you said, all right, the window's back open. Let's go. Part of that's going to be solving your quarterback issues. And see, now I'm doing way deeper dive into the stuff I was talking about next week. But I think for any of that to work out, he's got to realize that needs to be done. But just continually thinking, we're 1 or 2 draft picks or one big free agent signing away from making the playoffs, and anything can happen, and you get to the Super Bowl. And I'm like, I just don't think that's realistic. Not right now. Yeah, I blanked on Ben Johnson when I said coordinators, but yeah, they're both doing a great job. And um, no, Sean needed Sean also to take home the trophy, but Sean, Greg Williams was kind of a detriment in 2010 and 2011 because, especially that 2011, a freaking Frisco game. So, hey, he did a great job having a defense that did give up a lot of yards and some decent points, but created a shit ton of turnovers and scored touchdowns. That's what Greg brought. But when kind of the undoing of those two teams in that Super Bowl run is when the other team could hang on to the ball. They knew they were going to, when Frisco did that game, they're just going to keep moving it down the field and eventually get points out of it. As far as Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, well, Aaron Glenn, this is only his second year, and Ben Johnson's third year, and Campbell's second year. So they made the playoffs last year after being kind of terrible the year before. This year is looking like a good run. So I wouldn't be too quick to judge on any of that yet. Well, I don't think we've had a strategy for years on a lot of the stuff that we did or didn't or could have done. Um, if we were going to trade up to take Mark Ingram and trade up to take Marcus Davenport, if they really wanted Patrick Mahomes, why didn't they do what they did when they said, "Oh, we really wanted Mark Ingram. That's why we traded up for him." Oh, we really wanted Marcus Davenport. He's going to be great. We trade up for him. The guy, Hall of Fame, greatest of all time in this whole thing that they said, "Oh, but we were waiting on him. We thought he'd make it to us." There's just no consistency in their bullshit sometimes. Yeah, I tell you anything, we got our ass kicked. We had the easiest schedule, still didn't make it. One game away, and think of some of those games that we gave away. And it's the same old story. Been doing it for years, giving away 2 or 3 games a year. Kind of already did it a couple times this year. So, nah, you'd have gotten the only chance you'd had to win a playoff game. But I think technically this would have happened is if you'd have drawn Philly because they were in shambles at that point. But anybody else, you weren't hanging. Yeah, other than that Greg Williams defense, Northern, we had some god terrible defenses over the last 30 years. Yeah, but I don't think Sean anointed him head coach in waiting. And even if he did, it wasn't in Sean's power to do so. And Mickey didn't have to listen to him. But yet, here we are. So, look, Northern, you can defend Mickey all you want. You ain't changing my opinion. There's only one person in this whole entire planet Earth that can change my opinion of Mickey. It's Mickey. And I don't think Mickey wants to do any changing. Sorry. Just the way I feel on the matter. Absolutely. So that's another boneheaded move. And you'd have gotten him way cheaper and you wouldn't be in the cap issue you were in right now. So even if it didn't work out, you could have got out of it. So yeah, that was another screw up he had. So anyway, it's gonna do it for about it today. Did not want to get caught up on the Nicky Dooms diatribe, but here we go again. So I'll try to avoid those names for a while. We'll be back Sunday night for the post game. And hopefully it's going to be a discussion where we can talk about, yeah, we're still seeing improvement on the things we need to see improvement on. Because I think that's the thing we really, really need to see. Again, going back to the coaching conversation we had about interim, at least I'm open minded enough to say, yeah, let's give him an audition now. We'll worry about the interview later. But as long as the caveat's in there, we need to make sure you're going to hire the best man for the job. So even if it looks like it's a lock, I think they still have to be open minded about bringing other candidates in and just making sure. I think it doesn't start working out, or you see any of the other problems that he kind of eliminated start to creep back in, then you've got some bigger issues. And that's why I'm saying you don't want to be closed minded about it. And you don't want to be ready to make excuses for it because that time's past. I mean, we have to be open and honest about what's going on and just going, this, that. In this case, I'll agree with Mickey when he said, look beyond the results. Because the thing what you're talking about there is you're looking at the process. It's like, are we totally off? Do we have to rebuild the whole thing? Or do we have it mostly right? It's just the tweaks and the fixes we need to make. I think it's a lot of what's going to go on for the remainder of the season can answer a lot of those questions. And it's important so you know where you're starting off in 2025 on the stuff you need to fix, whether it be coaching wise, roster wise, salary cap wise, needs to be fixed. That's a no brainer. But everything involved in the organization and get it back to that in that synergy in that phase. I'm looking over this year and the next, that 2015, 2016, let's year and a half, 2 years, hopefully no longer than that. Okay, now we're back in that spot where we can operate as a franchise who has a legitimate shot to get in the playoffs with a Super Bowl window. And let's start running our franchise that way. Then we're thinking a little more short term. Then we're kind of thinking year to year. And ultimately, when that window closes, you got to recognize and then back off from doing that and go, okay, we got to reset it again. So, a lot of that's going to start. Cleveland, bye week, Rams coming in. You're going to be able to figure out a lot of stuff, I think, in that span of time. So, if you're first time here, please go ahead, hit the like, share, subscribe, hit notifications. We'll be live Sunday night again, hopefully with some celebration, some good news, and seeing some good things. Before we go, in case you missed it, I mentioned at the very beginning, mentioned at the very end, there's a link in the description below, and I'll try to put it in the comments once this posts up. Merch shop, some black and gold stuff on sale, 10% discount. It went live right when we went live at 2:00 Central. And it'll be live for 24 hours, so till 2:00 Central. So go check it out. Something you like. Hey, everything a little bit helps the channel. I'm trying to give you guys a 10% discount to say thank you. And thank you for being here on the live stream and showing up. So till I see you Sunday night. I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.